This episode of Sovryn Tech is dedicated to the great Richard Hatch. He took to the stars with the best of them.
There are those who believe that life here began out there, far across the universe, with tribes of humans who may have been the forefathers of the Egyptians, or the Toltecs, or the Mayans. Some believe that there may yet be brothers of man who even now fight to survive somewhere beyond the heavens.
Some immortal words there, and some very, very immortal music, of course, done by Stu Phillips, the great Stu Phillips. If you didn't notice, that was the opening for Battlestar Galactica, just in case you didn't know. And I mean the real fucking Battlestar Galactica, not that horseshit that came out like 10 years ago. The real one from, 79, that, in some ways, was riding off of the popularity of Star Wars. They even got John Dykstra to be the special effects on that, which John Dykstra was, a bigwig at ILM, kind of at the time, well, before it was even really ILM. He was one of the guys, special effects guys behind the original Star Wars in 77. So, they had all the right moves, a lot of great actors. But it really, Battlestar Galactica kind of became something of its own. And before I go further into that, yeah, I'd love to open this episode up with, a nice woo and, some excitement and all of that. But I can't. So, the Q&A is going to be coming out this week. It'll be coming out tomorrow. Just my heart and time wasn't in it today, really. And don't worry, I'm going to deliver for you. The Golden Stallion always does. But, yesterday, February 7th, 2017, a real hero of mine, and someone who I, considered just shy of a friend, certainly a very close acquaintance. Almost, when does it turn into friend? I don't know. How many times hanging out, how many dinners, how many conversations, when does it turn into to being a friend? And you got to be careful, because when it comes to people that are celebrities or, past celebrities or something, yeah, you don't want to claim too much. And it's so Richard Hatch died. And I'm recording this on February 8th, 2017, HE, of course. He would have loved that. The idea of the Holocene calendar, he would have said, "Oh, absolutely, Brian. Yeah, no doubt. We need to run with that right now." I know he would have said that. So Richard Hatch died at the age of 71 due to a battle with pancreatic cancer. Of course, pancreatic cancer, as many of us know, is pretty much a life sentence, or a death sentence, I should say, not a life sentence. And ends people pretty quickly. Richard Hatch was, best known for, he certainly did a lot more, but best known for playing Apollo, Captain Apollo, son of Adama, in the 1979 Battlestar Galactica series. Definitely the, kind of the lead character, and he played off of very well of Dirk Benedict, playing Starbuck, back when Starbuck was a guy. I don't have a problem with Starbuck being a woman, but just saying, Dirk, you're filling some pretty serious shoes when you're trying to take on anything Dirk Benedict, did as far as acting goes. The guy was and is so unique. But so is Richard Hatch, because I think I don't even know where to go with a lot of this. I think that Richard Hatch is Apollo, again, kind of his main gig. Yeah, I mean, he was on All My Children, and he ended up, playing Tom Zarek in the later Battlestar Galactica series. I don't give a fuck about that. He did great. He was the only reason I ever even, bothered to watch the show. It's like, oh, Richard Hatch is back. All right. I want to see my buddy rocking and rolling, and I got to, thankfully. And he actually had some pretty cool lines in it, I thought. But then, I don't know, whatever. That show had no fucking idea what it was doing, where it was going. I can prove every ounce of that to you. It's so funny that there's a movie for the new Battlestar Galactica called The Plan, because it sure as hell didn't fucking have one. God, that show sucks so bad. Anyway, the original one did not. Part of that is I think Richard Hatch's portrayal of Apollo. Because Richard Hatch was such an optimist in life, I think that totally was portrayed and parlayed on the screen in the character of Captain Apollo. And it was just amazing to have that kind of play off of, sort of the surety, the confidence, all of which Richard really had in life. To play that off of kind of the more somber and commanding tone of his character in character, his father of Adama, played by Lauren Green, who we lost back in the 80s. I was way too young to understand that. I mean, Adama's Commander Adama's. I mean, it's always a toss up. Who's your favorite character, right? I mean, I have a little Funko Pop figure of Commander Adama. That's how much I really I love that character to death. And then to play off of kind of Starbucks laissez-faire devil may care kind of attitude. I mean, he was the perfect personality foil to all of these different characters on this show on Battlestar Galactica. And let's understand, I mean, that this was, Battlestar Galactica, the 79 Galactica, there's a total of 24 hours of it that's not counting Galactica 1980. That's a whole other conversation. I'm not going to go there, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this. This entire show, yes, is dedicated to Richard Hatch. That's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, because he deserves it. And I have other plans for Sovryn Tech this week, so we're not going to get into it there. As much as I would be more than happy to stop all the fucking presses to talk about this guy. But anyway, Battlestar Galactica, 24 hours, not counting 1980. That's all you got, and it is just one of the most epic, tremendous, original, and yes, it is original. In fact, it's crap that George Lucas was suing Battlestar Galactica. Fuck him. Because the laser blasts look a little too much like Star Wars. You bastard. Who cares? What you needed more money? I mean, what was it? Let Galactica do its thing. I think that's the reason that show got canned. I mean, yeah, I know about the whole ratings stuff, but ABC was fucking around as far as that goes. At the time, Battlestar Galactica was the most expensive show ever made. It was $1 million an episode. So $24 million for an entire first season. I mean, now most pilots cost pilot episodes cost $24 million. It's, a sneeze for modern television, but at the time that was huge. It was a massive, massive ordeal, and it showed. It really showed. I mean, the level of sophistication and class that show had. Now, granted, yeah, I know you can crack all the jokes how they recycled special effects footage and they did this and that. Sure. Well, I mean, you played it lean and mean where you could. I mean, but so much of what it did was just so good. And I mean, to kind of speak to the power of that show, and I want to talk more about Richard. To kind of speak to the power of that show, so quick story. When I was 11th grade, 10th, 11th grade, something like that. It was when Lloyd Bridges died, who played Commander Kane in the two-parter Living Legend in the original Battlestar Galactica series. I was totally on board with Commander Kane being a woman, by the way, played by Ensign Rowe, of course. In the new one, that was fine with me. But you know, when I was in 11th grade, so we had to write current events stuff, and I think there was some, I don't know, Clinton was doing some bullshit in some other country at the time. So I did a write up in the it was effectively history class that I was in. I did a write up about Lloyd Bridges. You know, we had to do like a couple of paragraphs of about a current event, and that's what I did. And at the same time, like Mother Teresa died. There was a bunch of strange deaths, kind of like what's I mean, kind of, well, what we're talking about right now. Not strange, but just, you know, people of note, perhaps. Even though everybody should be of note, but you know what I mean. And I wrote this, 2-3 paragraphs saying how I thought it was fucking crap that Lloyd Bridges' funeral isn't on TV, and there was no, I looked into it, I mean, there was no request for it not to be, you know, that he wasn't getting the ticker tape parade, that, that no one was talking about him, and that in the newspaper, I remember at the time, it was in the Observer Dispatch, or what in Utica, New York, we called the Observer Disgrace. It was the smallest little section of the newspaper. This is when newspapers were a thing, where, actually mattered. As to where, everybody else is getting, these effectively centerfolds of their death. And I was just, and Burgess Meredith died around the same time too, and so I kind of talked about Burgess Meredith as well. Of course, Burgess Meredith, best known for playing the Penguin in the original, or in the '66 Batman series, as well as Mickey, in the Rocky movies. So I had, at that time I had a couple of heroes die, as a teenager, and it hurt. And I was mad that no one else saw them as important as I did. Because, and my point being, and actually, I mean, like, my teacher read it aloud. She was just so, kind of, I guess, impressed. I don't know what word to use there. Maybe moved. But my point is that, Lloyd Bridges, I mean, yeah, he did airplane movies. I love those. He did a lot of good comedy shit. He did Sea Hunt. I mean, I get all that. But what I really knew him was as Commander Kane. But the performance and just the level at the time, even in the 90s, even though the show at that point was already like 20 years old, or should I say 20 yarns for the Galactica fans out there. It still looked so legit. Everything was still so like, no, yeah, this is it. This is like this is a real, or this is a really serious representation of life among the stars and all this. I get it that everybody thinks it's like campy or cheesy now, or Star Wars ripoff. I think that's nonsense. Star Wars doesn't have a single character with the amount of panache, the amount of real depth. Just of Commander Kane, who only appeared, in 2 episodes. No offense to Star Wars, I love Star Wars. So, but it was so moving, like that character of Commander Kane, just in those 2 hours. My point is that show was really powerful, and even just like 5 minutes of showing you somebody, that 5 minutes would stick with you. It would really stick with you. Or even, Patrick McNee playing, Count Ibley. Like, I mean, that was 2 episodes, but it really stuck with you. Like, man, you remembered that character, and you remember them for all time. I mean, I can still think of, Count Ibley was like the ultimate hedonist in that show, and like him getting along with Starbucks, and, I love his classic line. It's like, why should she be tied down to one man, or you and I to one woman? And it's like, whoa, you never hear that shit, right? On TV, and I mean, it sticks with you. I haven't watched an episode of Galactica in a while. Oh, so anyway, Richard Hatch, I mean, like I said, it's what he's best known for doing that. Maybe now he'd be more remembered for his role as Tom Zarek in the new Galactica, which I think is frankly insulting. So now he was a real proponent. I want to get into this. Richard Hatch was a real proponent of the original Galactica. Like, he was trying over and over and over again. And, I mean, he had some acting roles outside of it. I mean, I'm sure he was a bit of a starving actor, perhaps, at the time. He was also a motivational speaker, which I had the pleasure of seeing that. And, boy, he could motivate. I get it. Some of these motivational speakers are full of crap, but he had a certain certain magic to him when he did it. But anyway, yeah, he was trying like hell, to get Galactica back up and running in the 90s. He did what was called Battlestar Galactica: The Second Coming. Now, I linked to the trailer for that, which is pretty much the only thing anybody ever saw of it. I keep hearing about this, like, that they actually did a 30-minute episode of some kind. I've never seen that, and I've never heard about that. I don't know what the fuck people are talking about when they say that. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying I never caught it, and I never thought to ask Richard about it because I never heard of it. Like, if I had, I would have said something. And I would have been like, hey, you got this 30-minute thing? I bet I could have gotten my hands on it. But anyway, he did this Battlestar Galactica: The Second Coming, where he got, a bunch of, he brought back a ton of actors, Edward Murdoch, just a bunch of different guys, even the guy that played Bo-Jay. He brought all these people back, and he had like this, 2-3 minute trailer that was just fucking insane. Like, this was just before fan films of any stripe became a thing. Like before Star Wars fan films or anything like that. And, he gathered some investors somehow, and he got some actors together. Of course, Lauren Green was dead at the time. But I think, he grabbed everybody he could. And, he made it work. And like you saw, there was a story going on there, and there was a continuation going on there. Oh man. And it even got Baltar back. In fact, it would have been pretty much was it John Colicos? It would have been like his last role, other than playing Kor, right, on Star Trek. Boy, if I'm getting any of these names wrong, it's been a hell of a week. But anyway, this, like, when he would show this, I put a link in the show notes for this so that you can go watch it. Now, granted, part of what makes it work so well is that he uses kind of the very famous music from Crimson Tide, and it really takes it over the top. And he gives, Richard Hatch does some very stirring speeches and all this, and it really, really ends up well. There's some nice advancements. I mean, the CGI looks like shit now, and so what? Okay, we get it. I don't care, all right, because this was awesome. And like, one of the great joys I had at the time was that I was going to a lot of science fiction conventions. Richard Hatch was schlepping it around at a bunch of different science fiction conventions. And so, like, any time that, I saw on the billing that it said, oh yeah, and there's going to be a special showing of, Battlestar Galactica: The Second Coming, the trailer. Look, there was no YouTube. This is how you saw it. Yeah, there was online video at the time, but it wasn't like he didn't put it on there. And it's understandable. He wanted people to come to him to see it and to get people excited. And it's true. And when he talked about it, like what he explained, what he had in mind for the story and all this, it was fucking exciting. It was so exciting. All the concepts that he had were amazing. And yeah, like I remember at one Dragon Con when he showed it off, and people never got tired of this. People would show up, and some of them young people, some of them teenagers just like me, because at the time, we're talking the mid-90s to late 90s, right? Okay, at the time, Battlestar Galactica was, getting a lot of play. It was in regular rotation on the Sci-Fi Channel, back when the Sci-Fi Channel was cool. And you had... like they even, I think on New Year's, of course, New Year's Sci-Fi Channel, maybe they still do this, I don't know, I haven't watched Sci-Fi in a while, but, they would do this where they'd have the Twilight Zone marathon. Well, I think it was like on Christmas, they would have what was called the Battlestar Galactathon, and they would, for 24 hours, because again, there's 24 episodes, for 24 hours, they would, they'd play Galactica, and Dirk Benedict would host it, or whoever would host it. It was phenomenal. It was huge. People were in love with this shit, and they do this cycle where they would just kind of like show off a lot of, Glenn Larson, who's the creator of Battlestar Galactica. They would just show his stuff, like at like 3 or 4 p.m., whatever. Like they'd play Galactica, then they'd play 2 seasons of Buck Rogers. As you can imagine, this was heaven for me to come home from school and be like, oh yeah, Battlestar Galactica's on, or oh, Buck Rogers is on. It was very exciting. So at the time, I mean, people were really into this. Like, they were really catching on to it. I mean, I watched it. I had like an old VHS that had like 1 or 2 episodes of Battlestar Galactica on it, along with a couple episodes of Buck Rogers. And I watched that to no end growing up. Like, that VHS tape definitely didn't last a whole ton of time because, I mean, it got a lot of play from me. They were the only episodes I had, and they were from syndication when, my dad had a Vicar, a VCR at the time. And anyway, so I already kind of was familiar with the show, but then to be able to watch it in all of its glory, and what a glory, I was just fucking on it, and watching it nonstop. So anyway, you go to these conventions, and people are getting excited. It's the 20th Yarn reunion of Battlestar Galactica, or became the 25th Yarn reunion of Battlestar Galactica, and all this, and like young women, older women, young men, older men, whatever. I mean, they were excited. I'm not kidding. That after that trailer would play, like literally, women would be lifting up their tops. Women would be tossing their underwear at Richard Hatch. No, I'm no joke. I'm as serious as a heart attack. It was incredible. Like that's how big a deal this fucking trailer was at the time. And it was really good, especially at the time. It was really, it was exciting. It was like, wow, because there wasn't a whole ton of science fiction at the time, frankly. Not in America. So Richard Hatch, I mean, and granted, and this is the saddest part, is that no networks, nobody, no studios saw the potential. They did not see the potential for this, to be an actual thing. And that's such a crime because, I mean, he is so passionate. He was so passionate about everything. And no one gave him the shot. And I think that's fucking terrible. And it's almost the story of his life. I want to talk about some other things because he actually has some degree of a legacy left over him. But like, he did another thing, like he kind of realized the studios weren't going to jump on board with the Second Coming eventually, and he went on, and he was going to try creating his own little sci-fi series because obviously people recognized, oh hey, this guy has ideas, oh hey, this guy can actually kind of throw a production together, like with Second Coming. And so he did the Great War of Magellan, which looked kind of cool. I mean, you weren't so you didn't let so much pass. Like with the Second Coming, you saw a degree of flaw here and there, but you let it slide because it's like, it's okay. We're going to get more Battlestar Galactica. That's all that really matters, folks, right? And I love that attitude about nerds in the 90s. That's the way they saw things, I mean, yeah, they were critical as fuck. I mean, they were really critical, but at the same time, it was like, look, just please give us more. We just want more from these universes that we love. And at the time, I mean, Galactica kind of had that hot thing going with Rob Liefeld's Maximum Press comic, which is really good. Very sexy. Like, definitely the sexiest Galactica you can get your hands on. But anyway, so he tried the Great War of Magellan. That didn't necessarily take. But, it looked all right. I mean, it could have, I think it could have been something. If Sci-Fi Channel picked it up, it could have been really interesting, in my opinion. And it was just around the time that Sci-Fi Channel was starting to do its own content, kind of like the Sci Fridays with Lex and First Wave, of course, the best of the bunch, and Farscape. So it's a pity that didn't take off. But what happened out of all of it was, with the excitement. So the studios didn't pick up on any of this shit. Okay, fine. But the amazing thing that occurred was that, publishers kind of saw, they said, oh, wait a second, like there's something here. And I don't remember if it was Bain or whoever, first published these, years ago. It's actually, we're talking about almost the 20th anniversary of when this started. But in 1997, they saw the excitement for the Second Coming, and they, a publisher approached Richard and said, hey, you've got something here. Like, yeah, we get it. It's not enough numbers for the studios, but it's enough numbers for us. Would you be willing to do novels on this? And Richard said yes. On the whole Battlestar Galactica, the Second Coming idea. And he ran with it. And he ended up doing 7 books, and they're all fucking great. Like, they're really great. In 97, Armageddon came out. In Warhawk, 98, Warhawk came out. 2001 was Resurrection. 2002 was Rebellion. I mean, every year something was coming out pretty much. Paradis came out in 2003, then Destiny in 04, and then it ended with Redemption in 05. And of course, it ended there pretty much because probably the publisher saw, the nail in the coffin. Not that those books weren't doing numbers, but because what came out in 2005? Right, Battlestar Galactica, the new one by dipshit Ron Moore, was going to come out, and so that pretty much put the kibosh on it. But it could have kept on going. And Richard was working with a bunch of different co-authors, like the first one, Armageddon. So all right, here's the thing. Let's talk a little bit about this. Okay, we're not going to spend much more time on it, but the book Armageddon, the first in Richard Hatch's kind of sequel series to the original Battlestar Galactica, not remake, but a sequel series, was written with Christopher Golden, which was phenomenal. Warhawk's probably my favorite of all of those books, or maybe Resurrection. Anyway, but Armageddon was really good. There is a problem, though. It was really cool. They laid out a lot of new stuff. They explained, of course, Lauren Green was dead by that time, so they explained what happened to Commander Adama. You got the idea of what was getting laid out in that amazing Second Coming trailer. And yeah, obviously, Richard Hatch wasn't writing it himself, but these were exciting. In fact, they're even selling gold foil hardcover editions signed by Richard Hatch. I had for the first few that they did that, I scooped them up. I was like, oh yeah, please. I'm going to see Richard next week, but I don't give a shit. Let me help the man. And anyway, the problem with Armageddon was as much as Richard Hatch was pushing for more Galactica and was really holding on to that, and yes, it's because he was what he was best known for, so he saw it as a meal ticket. I understand that, and I mean that with no disrespect. Okay, everybody's working. But with Armageddon, he kind of botched some things up. He seemed to have forgotten, he spelled Felgercarb wrong, and he spelled it Felder with a D instead of a G in the middle. That sucked. But I mean, it was cool. It had a glossary of all the different terms, and he kind of changed a couple things, microns ended up meaning something else, I think. That was one of the beauties of Battlestar Galactica, was how they kind of invented their own swearing and their own language, which people always made fun of, but what's fucking hilarious to me is that when people talk about Firefly, they have no problem with saying Goram instead of goddamn. Oh, that's fine. But when Battlestar Galactica does it, oh, that's terrible. Those idiots. That's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, granted, maybe the times changed, because I guess people got into saying the word frack too. That was another classic swear word from the 70s. I mean, it was great for me because, in my house, when I was growing up, as a kid, I couldn't swear. We weren't allowed to swear. It was a Jewish home and then an Adventist home eventually. And so what could I do? Well, the thing is that they didn't care if I was just quoting Battlestar Galactica, so I could say frack and Felgercarb all I wanted, Or the only one I couldn't get away with was the Aquaticus astrum. I think that was supposed to mean a horse's ass, and I couldn't say that because it sounded a little too close. But frack and Felgercarb, no problem. I said it all the time. My parents never said shit about it. So that was really cool. Anyway, so in Armageddon, he messed that up. He also messed the crucial thing. I mean, that's nothing. If he just changed the words a little bit. But the crucial thing that he screwed up was there's a point where Apollo kills a Cylon in it, and he said that the Cylon had lizard skin. I don't know how this got past everybody, but he totally forgot that the Cylons are machines. They were a lizard race 1,000 yarns ago, or 1,000 years ago. But now they're not. Now they're just machines that ended up killing their lizard masters. And he tried to kind of fix that in later books, but I mean that was such a glaring fucking mistake. I don't know how that got missed. And I mean it's right in the opening line of Saga of a Star World, which is the 3-parter beginning of Battlestar Galactica. So that was, I think he got ribbed a lot for that one. I wasn't the rude one to do it just because I thought it was so cool to be hanging out with Richard Hatch. But, yeah, so, I mean, the books weren't exactly perfect, but they were as far as like maybe sticking with the lore 100% all the time, but they were really good. Like I thought he did a phenomenal job, and I was just so hungry. I mean, there was comic books, yes. Like I said, there was Maximum Press. Realm Press was also around '01. Was also doing a comic book series where they were treating it like a second season. I mean, there was plenty of stories out there, but to be getting it from Richard Hatch himself, who again proved his chops with the Second Coming trailer, which again, folks, understand at the time, it wasn't 2011 internet. Okay, it was, this is the late 90s, and making a trailer that looked like that was a big fucking deal. That meant you had some ability. Okay, whatever that ability was, but it meant you had it. As for now, yeah, anybody could make shit like that, with their smartphone. Oh man. Anyway, I could go on and on. I definitely recommend reading those books. And if you've never watched the original Battlestar Galactica, if you don't know my fandom, I mean, I've played on Sovryn Tech. I've aired commercials for the original Battlestar Galactica for years because I feel like it never gets the respect that's due. It never, and oh boy, that. So okay. So I'm just going to say, read the books as well. I think in fact, if you can't find copies, I have personal ebooks made of all 7 of these books. If you don't, you can't get your hands on them, but I think they're fucking great. Really, really, really solid titles. But that's another thing too with Richard Hatch, and this was kind of like one of the worst moments of fate. At least for me, maybe. I don't know if it so much was for him at the time. But the first winner of the reality TV show Survivor was a man named Richard Hatch, gay man, which fine. And really, like on the tip of everybody's tongue at that time, this is kind of like the mid-aughts, right? Was the name Richard Hatch. And I'd hear people talking about Richard Hatch, or I'd see magazines that say Richard Hatch, and I'd be like, oh my God, what's Richard doing? This is great. Good. What happened? And, unfortunately, it had nothing to do with him at all. Just this guy who was, kind of in the spotlight for a few years because he was the original survivor. Really, really kind of took his namesake. And so Richard Hatch, that sucked. I really think that sucked. So just saying a guy not getting his due, I don't feel that he really got his due. Another thing that's absolutely terrible is Paramount, and really, I'm not one to take advantage of somebody's death, and I never recommend doing anything like that. But I wouldn't feel too terrible if the production team for Star Trek Axanar, which is a Star Trek fan film, a really well done it's an independent production. Calling it a fan film is derogatory, frankly, considering the level of production it's at. But Star Trek Axanar, which we've covered on Sovryn Tech for over a year now, because it's been in a copyright battle with CBS and Paramount over what can a quote-unquote fan film actually do and be, because they're probably scared to death that Star Trek fans can make better movies than they do, not insulting the movies that are getting made. Okay, but they could be better, right? Richard Hatch was going to play a Klingon commander in it, Karn. And he did, actually, in Prelude to Axanar. He was in it. And he was great. Like, he pulled off a Klingon perfectly. But the production of the movie's been in, development hell because of the whole lawsuit from CBS and Paramount for, the past almost 2 years, almost 3 years now. And now he's gone. Now he's dead. And he doesn't get to, really, I think he would have delivered a lot. I think he would have made I know he made a hell of a Klingon. He did in Prelude. But I think he would have, really brought a lot of gravitas. To exactly, to Star Trek, and to this independent production. It would have been phenomenal. And now he's gone. And a lawsuit kept him from doing what may be one of the best roles of his life, quite frankly. What a bunch of shit. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm really pissed off. I mean, I hung out. This guy, so he had a website back when not everybody had a website. He had a website, and we're talking like 96, 97, something like that. And he actually would do little, like a minute 45 videos. This is about the best you could do at the time. But he would do little videos where he would just talk to people, and he kind of do his little inspirational shit. And frankly, at the time, like, I was into it. I was like, yeah, yeah, fucking right, Apollo. Tell him. Tell him like it's gonna be all right, and this is like you got to just do this, and then things can work out, etc. And it was really good stuff, And I always said, like after I saw those little videos online, I was like, yeah, like I got to hang out with him. This guy's got to be so cool. And eventually, down the line, I got to quite a few times, and he was just such a positive dude. He was a funny as hell guy, and let me tell you, now that he's gone, and he can't really get into trouble for this, at least according to him, he had a lot of pie back in the day. Ooh, boy, did he get a lot of pie. If you know what I mean. I mean, this guy lived it up. Not a crazy drinker either. That I thought that was cool too. Because like a lot of times I go to these dinners at these conventions, and you get to meet so many different like sci-fi and fantasy celebrities and everything, or authors, whatever, and so many of them. I mean, were just like drinking under the table, and I mean almost literally getting under the table and drinking. It was very rare to find ones that weren't. Like Harlan Ellison would never drink. Richard really wouldn't. He wouldn't do it either. And but he was just, I mean, hilarious, and the way he could deliver a story, goddamn, he's so cool to hang out with. I mean, just so cool, And I mean, I get it. A lot of celebrities will say, "Oh yeah, I remember you." And maybe he didn't remember me each time because sometimes it'd be a couple years before we'd run into each other again or whatever, and be it at Dragon Con or any of those, any of the smaller ones, like kind of the pre-Wonder Cons, a lot of that shit, or a World Con. Man, yeah, well, he'd say, "Hey, Brian, what's up?" and kind of get, do the whole thing, and yeah, yeah, this isn't cool. I mean, 71, yeah, I know, like, well, I always say it, but any age is too young. And 71, I guess you could say, is a good life, and I know to some degree he lived a pretty good life, at least for certain segments of it. And I just hate it. I just so hate it that all these guys, and then to people half my age, most of the deaths that have been occurring in the past, throughout 2016 and other things, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean anything to them, and I get that. Some of it's generational, and I just and I kind of just for myself. I kind of feel, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you, I apologize. I just really wanted to dedicate a show to him. Like it matters because he did just such incredible work. But I feel like myself that like I grew up in this terrible in-between moment. And I love life, don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying that I grew up in this terrible in-between moment where like now, with all these people getting into their 70s and 80s and who knows what else, they were still a big deal when I was young, and and were formative to me, and could be seen as kind of on-screen heroes, and the kind of the saying goes like how terrible is it that for so for some generations, Gen Xers, maybe baby boomers, and maybe some older millennials. That when these celebrity deaths happen, that it hits them so hard, and it's probably because like these, a lot of these people raised us because our parents weren't fucking there. So yeah, so I'm like at this weird in between point to where like all these actors that die, like they were a part of me, as to where if I was just a few years younger, they wouldn't be. And so it hurts. And then, but at the same time, like there's a whole other generation of actors that are going to end up dying probably in the next 15, 20 years, where it's like, it's going to hit, say, younger millennials, which I'm an older millennial, but it's going to hit younger millennials hard, and then it's going to hit me hard too. But like the younger millennials aren't getting hit by this shit at all. At least, most of them, I'm assuming, I know that. So it just sucks, It really sucks, and this one sucks pretty hard because this is a guy that really worked hard, and delivered some good shit, had great ideas, and was just a sweetheart of a man. And maybe out of all of the deaths that have happened, I mean, I've been able to meet some of these people or see them in concert or do something like that. like Carrie Fisher certainly hit me hard. But like this is one of the guys where like I really like I got to hang out with this dude. I got to talk to him multiple times. I knew him. And it sucks, and especially when you see so many opportunities that this guy had, so much passion that this guy was delivering to fans, like with just Star Trek Axanar or with Battlestar Galactica: The Second Coming. Fortunately, he got to leave a legacy of 7 incredible books for us to read for all time. Okay, to continue on the story from a magical 24 hours of existence that is the original Battlestar Galactica. But it just sucks that he didn't get his, he wasn't given the shot, because I think he could have really done something, really impressive. He had the right ideas, and he had the talent. He had all the fucking talent in the world. Just see him playing Tom Zarek. Best thing on that goddamn show. So, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Tomorrow, the Q&A episode will be out. Tomorrow, that'll be Thursday. That'll be February 9th, and I will release that. And it's going to be a lot about religion. But, I just want to have it out there that, look, Richard Hatch, I'm an atheist, so I know you're not listening. But, man, did you mean a lot to me. And it was such a pleasure, such an honor, to hang out with somebody that just had that much positivity and that much drive to just never stop, just nonstop, keep pushing. No, I mean, and to have that singular focus. You were something else, man. I mean, you really had it. So, anyway, Captain Apollo, thank you. Richard Hatch, thank you. And Sovryn Tech listeners, I may not have done the best job of expressing all my feelings on this, but I wanted to get it out there. And if you didn't know about Richard Hatch, well, I wanted you to know, that this was a guy that, he brought joy to people's lives. He really did. Whether it was in 1979 or whatever year it happened to be. Or if it was in 1997 when he started the sequel book series, or if you just happen to catch one of his inspirational talks, or when he was on, let me tell you, when he was on the convention floor, he would, anybody that like I remember one in particular, there would be, like, these people would sell costumes, right? They would sell, this is before there was cosplay. They'd sell uniforms, and they'd have like Galactica uniforms, and he would stop right there. And he would sit and he would talk with those people, because I think he recognized in these people that would take the time to sew these amazing costumes and uniforms from Battlestar Galactica. He would take the time and he would talk to them because he recognized that they had the same passion he did for this thing. Okay, and he would put on the outfit, he would do the whole thing, he'd take pictures with everybody, he'd pop on the helmet, and he'd start humming the Galactica theme and everything. I mean, it was something else. Like he would really stop and take the time with people, without them even asking. It was, man, he was so cool. So, anyway, Richard Hatch will be missed, and the opportunities that could have been, the things that could have been, will definitely be missed, at least by me. So, anyway, there you have it. Q&A will be out tomorrow. Will be out on Thursday the 9th. And, of course, there'll be a very special, very amazing Sex and Science Hour coming out this week. And then Sovryn Tech will be actually also a special Sovryn Tech this week as well. So, there you have it. Yeah, this one goes out to Richard Hatch. Thank you. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please, share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.